Hello, my name is Gabe, and this is my total QBR presentation. So we don't actually know the real formula. This stat was developed in 2011 by ESPN, but they never released a formula to the public. But we kind of know what goes into it. So it starts with an expected points added, and then they divide the credit among the quarterback and the teammates that contributed to the play. Then they determine the context and weight of each play that the quarterback's involved in. So EPA is calculated by down distance and the yard line at the snap, and each combination of those has its own point value. So the quarterback's impact on passes, rushes, turnovers, and penalties on every play that they're playing are taken into account. And each play is valued as a success or a failure, and then how much the quarterback contributed to the success or failure is taken into account. So after that, the difficulty of the play is taken into account. So a 1 yard pass is not as difficult as a 30-yard pass, for an example, and is only given credit for the typical number of yards after completion. So the other yards are given to the receiver. And garbage time plays have less value, but there's no added value for clutch plays. So only one end of the spectrum is taken into account, and there's an adjustment made for how tough the opponent's defense is, and then that's how you get your final total QBR. So adjusted QBR is on a 0 to 100 scale. For a season, 50 is average play, 75 is really good Pro Bowl level play, and 100 is a perfect play. And for on the game level, 75 means if other factors, which are defense and teammates, are constant, your team is expected to win about 75% of the time with that level of play. And some records. So to qualify for a season's total QBR, the quarterback must play at least 20 action plays per team games played. And the stat's only been recorded since 2006, so there's a limited pool of guys for records. But the highest season total has been Tom Brady in 2007. He recorded a score of 87. The lowest season total was Jimmy Clausen in 2010 with 13.8. And Peyton Manning has led the league 4 times since 2006, which is the most anybody's led. And the highest single game total was Colin Kaepernick with a 99.8 against Jacksonville in 2013. So this stat is working to replace the passer rating stat, which actually is the NFL's official recognized stat for quarterback performance. And passer rating is much simpler and only uses passing stats. It's not an analysis of each play. But QBR accounts for throwing distance, sacks, fumbles, design runs, scrambles, and it makes adjustments for the context of the situation. So it's a lot more of a detailed statistic. So there's good features and there's some drawbacks on it. The stat shows how efficient a quarterback is. It's not just their stats. So that's a good feature of it. And perhaps the best feature is that it takes a lot more into account than the passer rating does and gives value based on situations, which is rare for stats. And it doesn't show who the most talented is. It shows who provides the most efficient play to help their team win. So it kind of helps out like the game manager type players. And a drawback is that it values average play a lot of times. So the game managers are overvalued. A big drawback is that ESPN hasn't released all of the details that go into it, so a lot of people don't really know where these players are getting their ratings from. For an example, in week 3 in 2017, Alex Smith, as you can see, won the game, had pretty solid stats, game manager type stats, and Phillip Rivers had pretty poor stats, but before the opponent adjustment was made, Smith had a QBR of 7.8 and Rivers had 16.1. So Rivers had a higher QBR somehow over Smith, which a lot of people lost trust in the system because they don't know how that score could be. A current example of this statistic is in 2015, Aaron Rodgers took on Kirk Cousins in the NFC wildcard game. Packers won. And as you look at the stat lines, Rodgers had a pretty average day. Cousins, he only had 1 touchdown, but he had a lot of yards. So just looking at the stat lines, it looks like Kirk Cousins had the better statistical day. You'd think that he'd probably played better, but actually Cousins got sacked 6 times. He fumbled 3 times and had 2 penalties. And Rodgers is only sacked once, never fumbled, had no penalties, and actually drew a couple of penalties that kept the drives alive. And as you can see, Rodgers ended up actually having a total QBR of almost 30 points higher than Kirk Cousins. So this shows that Rodgers was much more efficient and contributed more to the winning rather than just having flashier stats. And that is my presentation for total QBR.